briefly this morning, so thank you all for coming. My name is Colleen Rudio, and I'm the current president of the Missoula Downtown Association. So it's my pleasure to be here with you today and to kind of facilitate our conversation. This forum is really the result of the desire of multiple organizations wanting to create a structure that allows us to have good, solid community conversation and to allow that to continue throughout the year. This is our fourth forum, and we will certainly be looking into 2010. And at the end of today, we're probably going to ask some questions in regards to what would you like to see in 2010 as it relates to these forums. So be thinking of that as the program continues. We've got a great panel for you today. We have individuals from the real estate sector, the financial sector, the building sector, the retail sector. So I think we've got some great conversation. More water in that bucket. There's ice out on the street. We don't need it on the lap. All right, so I think we have a great panel today, and we're going to kick things off with Larry Swanson with some economic input as far as, what's happening right now, where we've been this last year, and where we're going, or where he anticipates that we're going to be moving forward. Before we get started, though, I'd like to thank a couple of individuals and a couple of organizations. If there's any representatives from these organizations in the room, if you wouldn't mind please standing. If you're on the board or if you are a member or an employee of that organization, the Missoula Area Economic Development, the Missoula Convention and Visitors Bureau, Missoula Organization of Realtors, the Missoula Building Industry Association, the Missoula Chamber of Commerce, the Missoula Downtown Association, Missoula Business Women's Network, the Holiday Inn, First Security Bank, as well as the Missoulian. These organizations and the people that volunteer for these organizations have literally put forward a ton of hours to make sure that these forums are meaningful for you and to make sure that they're very poignant in addressing the type of economic concerns that we might be having in our community. So I'd like to give them all a round of applause for making 2009 forums successful. It's interesting. This week, our community is experiencing, celebration as well as experiencing some challenges. And one thing that I know for sure about Missoula, one of the reasons why I love Missoula so much and why we've chosen this to be our home, is because the people in Missoula always show up. And whether it's standing on the street to wish the Grizzlies good luck as they're heading to the airport, or whether it's multiple organizations and people joining together to try to put together the resources that are going to be necessary to help a large group of our community work through a big challenge that they're going to be facing here in the next several weeks and the next several months. This community is amazing, and I really want to thank the panelists that are here today and all those that make Missoula what it is, because without it and without those people, we really would be just another place that has buildings and streets and people going to jobs. And I think that Missoula is a lot more than that, and I think that that's because of the people that are in this room. So thank you all for being here this morning. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Larry and let him kick things off. You ready?
Can everybody hear that okay? Is that on? Good. I'm going to spend about just 30, 35 minutes kind of putting some sidebars around what the other folks are going to talk about today. But we're going to kind of trace through, as we do with each of these, how this the current economy is moving and what our recovery looks like, how we sort of compare to other places and areas, and then kind of lead this into a conversation about what's next year likely to look like economically. We're in kind of the first one of these we had was last December. Last December, everybody was kind of in a panic mode. Very understandable. We were going through the banking crisis in September, October. The national recession that actually started in December of 2007 and was kind of working its way into western Montana. Missoula has held up amazingly well. We've got areas in Montana that are really doing much better than many other places in the country. So we've been fortunate, and we continue to be fortunate. But the longer this goes on and the longer it takes, that's where the risks lie and the vulnerability. So we'll talk about that a little bit, look at some numbers. That's all we can do is follow the numbers and get some idea of how this seems to work. This all started in the housing industry. And then it worked its way into banking and construction. And if you look at this map right here, I tend to walk around. So this map right here, all it is, it's just realty tract identifying those areas, metropolitan counties across the United States that have varying difficulties with regard to foreclosure actions relative to residential housing. All of the red counties are where foreclosures are relatively high, particularly in the dark red. That's where you've got a single foreclosure action for every 10 to 100 housing units in an area. And so when you look at this, as we talked about very early on, this housing problem is really centered in a few areas: California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Florida. And those lighter red areas are pulled into it. You can see there's a lot of those. And then if you look at Montana, blue areas are very low foreclosure levels. The dark blue is 1 per 10,000 to 100,000 housing units. So this is first quarter of 08, second quarter of 08, and then this is third quarter of 09. So all we're doing is just moving through this. So this thing is not over yet. This is third quarter. When fourth quarter, which is what we're in right now, comes out, our expectation right now is this is beginning to bottom. Okay, I mean, the national experts, when they talk about this, housing looks like it's bottoming, but this is disaster. This is not a good situation for banks, homeowners, home buyers, anybody. You can see in our area we're in good shape relative to this. If you look up in the panhandle of Idaho, they've got a few areas up there that, you know, they had a lot of development. They were on a very fast pace. And those are the areas that kind of got pulled in. If you look at in Oregon, Bend, Oregon, an example, very fast growing, very fast pace of construction, and overshot the market, and those are the difficulties. Florida, what have you. But we're still sort of paddling our way through this. Our housing sector is in pretty good shape, all things considered, and we're going to have some people in the industry talk with you a little bit about that a little later in the program here. Firsthand, what they're seeing, people with title companies, banks, and realtors. This is then just tracking through how this unemployment is kind of rippled through the country. And one thing about the national recession is that it doesn't affect every place in the same way. And if you go all the way back to August of 07, prior to the national recession actually beginning in December, this is what unemployment looked like. And the darkest colored counties have the highest unemployment, the lightest have the lowest. If you get down to the white areas, it's actually less than 2%, very, very low unemployment. And if you get to a black county, it's 10% and higher. And keep in mind, the national unemployment rate now is 10%. So this is August of 07. Then we go to October of 07, again, just prior to the recession. One thing about the interior west of the U.S., we had the fastest growing economy in the United States in the interior west going into the recession, and the very lowest unemployment rates. So as this thing has proceeded, now this is August of 08, October of 08, August of 09, September of 09, October of 09. So this is what we have worked our way into. And this is how nationally we went from 7, 8% unemployment to 10%. But you can also see that the way this thing works is it pulls areas already deep in unemployment deeper, and it spreads into other areas. So as the way it's worked for us, it's gotten to us slowly. You can see that Missoula is holding up actually better than a lot of the surrounding areas. The Flathead area was particularly hard hit. You can see the northern Idaho panhandle. That's very difficult, so that's very close to us. But in a lot of ways, there's a lot of resiliency here. So as we work our way out of this going forward, it will back its way out like that. So last in, first out. You can't ask for anything more. So, and nationally, it looks like unemployment may have peaked. It went to 10.2, it backed down to 10%, and so there's a fair chance that even though we're going into the winter months and unemployment tends to rise a bit across the country, we may be working our way through this. So we're going to follow it, and but we're holding up reasonably well in all of this. This is then just looking at U.S. versus Montana's unemployment, seasonally adjusted numbers. So the blue line is the United States, what we have unemployment-wise, went above 10% and then back down. And then Montana, you can see Montana has stayed consistently below that. And actually, statewide, we've actually expanded the margin between the unemployment rate nationally and what we have. So we're holding up better. The gap between us and the country is actually widening. And you can see that we saw this recent recovery, that little hook down in the last several months. That is a good thing. This is unadjusted data. So all of those ups and downs is just the seasonality of unemployment across the full length of a year, from year to year. And you can see we hit 7% across the state, and then we backed our way down to about 5.8. That's amazing. And so that's why about a month ago they came out with a report saying Montana was one of the states in the U.S. that was in recovery, if any of you saw that. That's what they're talking about, is that we did that. And those are the latest numbers. This is then Missoula's situation. You can see Missoula, you go back to the early 90s. We probably thought we had a pretty good economy in the early 90s, but we hit 10% and higher unemployment back in 91. And we have, over time, worked ourselves down to very, very low unemployment rates. We were working ourselves in that very tight labor market, but that in effect is how we went into the current recession. So when we went up, we've stayed under 7%, and we had a lot of recovery across the summer and fall, and we're looking pretty good. Now, keep in mind the seasonality of this. We ordinarily hit the high January of each year. So as we go into December and January, that's going to go back up. And it's probably when we get January unemployment numbers for Missoula, we'll probably be around 7% or higher. If we do that, that could be the peak, and then we start down again going into the spring and summer. And that's how this is going to work. And again, it's going to depend on just how people feel, whether or not people are spending, whether or not businesses, what their outlook is on things. But we've been in kind of a hunker down mode through much of this year, waiting, watching, and we're into kind of the early stages of recovery in this whole thing. This is the labor force and employment of Missoula over time. And this is just the market economic expansion that we've went through over a very long period. I mean, anybody that's been here since the early 90s knows that we've had almost uninterrupted employment growth in our area. This top line is the size of our workforce. The bottom line is the number of those folks employed. And then the gap between the two is unemployment. And you can see we basically hit a top there in 07 in the 7th month, July. And it's been tapering off since then. So with the seasonality worked in there. So we'll just continue to follow this and hopefully get to the other side of it. Now this is as busy as any chart I'm going to throw at you, but what I want you to see here is this just month-to-month change in the total number of people employed in Missoula County over the course of a year. And then looking from 03 out to the very latest numbers in October, okay? Wherever you see that line down, that month we lost employment. And wherever you see that bar up, in that month we added employment. So on a month-to-month basis in Missoula, we can lose up to 1,500 jobs, or we can add up to 1,500 jobs. That's just on a month-to-month basis. And keep in mind the recent announcement relative to the paper plant, that's about 417 current workers. So one of the things we've done over time is we've worked ourselves into a much larger employment base. 55 to 60,000 people work in Missoula County. And so our vulnerability to closures involving hundreds of employees, it's a hit, but it's not the hit that it was 20 years ago when we were a much smaller economy. So keep that in mind. So we'll work our way through this. You can see our very biggest month in which we lost jobs was January of last year. You see that? So we'll see how this works. I mean, it's very likely that when we go into January, we're going to be still in this realm and it's going to look, nasty, but this is kind of how it works. We'll walk through this. Here then is the unemployment counts again for Missoula. And then this is unemployment increases and decreases. So if you look at this, here are the bars going up are when we're adding to unemployment, and where the bars come down is where we're reducing unemployment on a month-to-month basis. So you see how it works. The high month is January. We ordinarily we can add 500 or more to unemployment January of each year under a normal economy. So when our January numbers come out and that's 500, 600, 700 in this current economy, that's what you should expect. You should know that's how it's going to work. I'll be surprised if it's much greater than 700, but we'll see. We'll see how this works out. And so then this is, again, the unemployment rate for Missoula. You can see we're still below the 7%. We'll probably go above that for a little bit, but then work our way down. This is Ravalli County. Ravalli County went much higher than us. They went above 9% unemployment, and then here's their recovery then on the end of that over the course of the summer. And this is the Flathead area. Flathead was hit by just the construction and real estate downturn, but also a lot of large closures involving big employers. But even then, through the summer months, they saw a lot of recovery. So I was just up there, and I mean, they've felt it much more than we have, but they're having some pretty marked recovery. Now let's just go to the bigger picture as we talk about, where's Missoula going? And if we look at population, this is how the area is growing. You can see Missoula at the top and Ravalli at the bottom. These are the long-term trends of the area. And the lower chart shows on a 5-year basis over time what the growth is in Missoula versus Ravalli County. In that early 90s, from 92 to 97, we added almost 10,000 people to Missoula County. And you can see that the subsequent 5-year period that fell to 5,800. And then more recently, it went back up to about 6,700. Going forward, we're probably going to be in that less than 6,000. Our growth rate has slowed a little bit, but the growth rate has slowed across the western United States and the interior West. We're no longer at the high growth rates that we were, but we're continuing to add folks. And you can see we basically, since the late 80s, went from about 78,000 people to 107. And as this works forward, this is not a very good projector. But when you look at where the populations are in this relatively fast-growing area of the United States, they're really little beehives and little ant colonies. Population is clustering and concentrating, and every one of those concentration points is an emerging small city. And that's what we've all become, and that's become a very important part of where we're going economically, because much of the economic growth in Montana is really concentrating in these small urban centers. And that's the way it's going to be the next 20 years as well. And Missoula, within the context of all this, within 50 miles, at the time of the 2000 census, we had 140,000 people. Billings, within 50 miles, had 142,000 people. Now, when the 2010 census comes out, that 50-mile population zone, Missoula will be larger than Billings. Not the city itself, but the 50-mile zone. And that's how these places operate. They're population centers, and the communities themselves at the center of these are regional economic centers. And if you look at how we're growing economically, that's what it reflects. You can see Great Falls that is at a much lower level. And then you get into Bozeman, Butte, and Helena, and they kind of share a population cluster there. You have to go basically Spokane all the way down to Cheyenne and Boise when the 2010 census comes out to find a population concentration larger than Missoula. So 2010 comes out, it comes out in 2012, we'll put that thing up, and that for us will be, I don't know, 160, 170,000 people. This is how we're changing as we go from the early 70s out to 2030. These are projections. This is how we're changing by age. This is a strange concoction, how the population is changing by age grouping. But if you look at this, the blue line is your under 20. The green is the young adults, 20 to 39. Missoula is only one of a handful of counties in Montana adding to its young adult population. Almost all of our counties, there's only about 8 that are adding that young adult population. The young adult population now is starting to rebuild the pipeline into our school system. So our early grades will begin to rise again. There's only a handful of counties that that's occurring in. And you can see that that's not growing fast, but it's still growing. What is growing fast are these bottom lines, the 40 to 59 population and the 60 and older. So if you look at between 2009 right now and 2025, that's a 16-year period, this is where Missoula's growth will occur. Much of it 60 and older. So that's going to translate into housing, it's going to translate into health care. The last forum we had was health care and how are you going to deal with all this. We're going to see a lot of expansion in our hospitals. You're going to see a different workforce. It's an older workforce. That's going to affect how we go about workforce development and education, which we've talked about. Will be a theme throughout these things. The communities that get that together and get that right are going to be the winners. And we don't have it together yet. But you can see, again, how this will work. This is personal income growth, and we've been doing really well. This is inflation adjusted. So the size of our economy, as measured by all of the income that pours into it and works its way through it, we've went from about a $1.6 billion economy to a $3.4 billion economy. That's billions. So you can see that work, and there's Ravalli below it. That's going to flatten out a bit. We're probably, when the 08 and the 09 numbers finally come out, you're going to see relatively flat personal income growth this year and probably flat income growth next year. We've had that before. Right there, that was back in the early and mid 80s. It's not a good situation to be in, but it's going to be temporary. So we'll still work our way through this. This is the year-to-year income growth, and then I've just put what I think will be the 08 and the 09 numbers in there, taking us up to the end of this year. That number for next year, and this is all personal income, not just employment earnings, but all income, it should rise, but it's going to be down. But we've gone through this before. I don't think we'll get into this world. I think we'll get into this, and then we'll start to recover as we move forward. This is our income growth by source. And you can see here that our employment earnings growth has already slowed. And it slowed along with population. So in other words, 97 to 02, we added over $500 million to our income base. this more recent period, we added about 260. And so there's a slowing in income, employment growth, population growth, what have you. Here's our per capita income gains over time. So this is inflation adjusted. This is when we take all of that income and divide it by how many people we have here. This is impressive. Now, our incomes aren't high enough, but we've been increasing per capita income at a faster rate than nationally for quite a long period of time. We have a lot of ground to make up, but this was the promise of the future, that we're adding to income at a faster rate than we're growing as an area from a population standpoint, and we're adding to our income faster than a lot of other places. And that's the case. Ravalli County's had the same thing, but they're operating at a considerably lower level than previously. Now we shift into employment. And this is how our employment growth has looked. Now, this is a very long period of time. This is 3 decades. But when you want to understand where we're going, you need to look back where we've been. And you can see that much of the expansion of Missoula over this period has been in services. That blue line is services broadly defined, and I'll get into what that is a little more. And this is retail. This is everything else in the economy below that. So there's no question where our growth in employment has been concentrated up through 2000. And as a result of that, here's employment change by major sector for these 3 decades over time. And services has went from 20% to almost 35% of our total employment base. That's going to continue. This is manufacturing. We went from 14 to less than 6. So this is the restructuring and the kind of change that our economy is going through and will continue to go through. Here's when we translate that from employment into employment earnings. You can see that services is where we're really adding to the income of our area, okay? And here's percentages then. So this blue bar, go back to 1970, it was about 15% of all of our employment earnings were in services. It went over 30% at 2000, and that's going to continue like that. Why do we have to look at this stuff? Because we have to understand it. We've got to translate it into what does it mean, where is this going to take us, that type of thing. Another thing to notice, our manufacturing has went from 19 to 8. That's happening nationally. Manufacturing is a dwindling, shrinking part of the U.S. economy. And the projections for the next 10 years just came out. That's going to continue across the country. Here's now, if we put the more recent data up, and this is now using some different industry codes, but if we look at major segments of our economy, here's where they stood in 01 through 07, and we get these numbers a little late and we just keep following them, but here's where our growth was concentrated just prior to the 2008 slowdown. Our single biggest growing piece of our economy is professional business financial services. Why is that growing so fast in Missoula? Because we're becoming a city. We're becoming a small metropolitan city in the Northern Rockies. There's this little formula that's working for us, but it's really working for these kinds of businesses. And they're the biggest part of our economy and the fastest growing part of our economy. And we'll drill down on this a little bit more. Right behind this is healthcare. That blue line up there, and our last session was on healthcare. Here's what its growth is. So the 2 biggest parts of our economy are professional, technical, financial, business services, and healthcare. And then we have, next to that, federal and state government. Now, federal and state government is primarily the university, the regional office of the Forest Service, and what have you. But these are the things that are making up what we have. This is our retail and wholesale trade sector. It's another big part of it. So if you look at this, it's professional business financial services, federal state government, healthcare, retail wholesale trade, and then this is hotels, restaurants, arts, entertainment, recreation. That's essentially where we're going to grow over the next 10 years, in the same areas. This is then looking at how this is shifting the makeup of our economy. I know this is a lot to look at. We'll put these up online for anybody that's interested afterwards, but healthcare is now 15% of all of our employment earnings. So out of every $100 received in Missoula by private individuals and households in the form of income from employment, 15 of those dollars come through our healthcare system, paid out to people who work in healthcare. Missoula has emerged as one of these healthcare centers, one of the most concentrated healthcare sectors in the western United States for a city of our size. It's a big deal. We're lucky. We're very fortunate. Right behind that is our retail sector, and then professional and technical services. You can see where that's rising. And then this is the university, primarily state government. Here's construction. And then again, here is manufacturing. And a big part of that manufacturing base of Missoula County historically has been centered in wood products. Yes? Not working? Scratchy. Okay. Now let's break it down one more level. These are the little places where Missoula is growing, or we're just taking the 2007 numbers and breaking them down, graining them. What's the single biggest piece of the Missoula economy? It's within healthcare. It's ambulatory health services, physicians' offices, non-hospitalized healthcare. What's right next to it? Professional and technical scientific services. And then what's next to that? State government, the university. These color codes, all of those teal at the top are professional and business services. The blue is our healthcare. The yellow is then government of different levels. Local government includes our public education system. All of the oranges are trade, wholesale, retail trade. This is our real estate and construction. This is transportation. All those white bars are something in transportation. And then we get down to utilities and our manufacturing. And then this is paper. I'll see that paper number. It's 42 million. That's that $40 million figure you read in yesterday's paper. This is coming out, apparently. But they were already at, it was about 417 workers, and they probably were already operating for the last year at less than 30 million. So it's been coming out for some time, okay? But at the time of these numbers in 07, that was where it was. You can see it within the range of things, and this is the rest of our natural resource sectors below that. Now this is levels in our economy. Here's growth. So this is what's growing, and this is what their level was in 07. So where did we grow the most? Professional and technical services. Now what is that? Well, it's all of our law firms, all of our accounting firms, our engineering firms, our, you name it, computer service firms. Behind that is what's called administrative services. It's a wide range of things in that. I mean, this is becoming a different economy, and we got to wrap our heads around it. Because what we want spread throughout our community and throughout all of our businesses is economic intelligence. You guys know what this looks like. You know how it works. And you translate that into how you're going to operate and do your business. The blue is where we're growing in healthcare. You can see the university's growth in that state government thing. The university's operating under a budgetary constraint right now and a 2-year freeze on wage and salary. So that's going to be constrained this year and next. And then you can see Missoula has really emerged as a wholesale trade center. It's a big deal. But it's rounding out our trade sector within our economy. This is that big hit that real estate has went through here. Much less real estate activity, and it's pulled a lot of income out of our economy. And this was the three areas of construction, still sort of going there. Here is wood products. We've been whittling that down over time. So this is the change going on. So what is our... This is just come out 2 days ago, and I'm just about done here, but what we do is we do every few years a national assessment of where is our economy going to grow over the next 10 years. This is a national one, and what that says is, this came out on December 10th, is that slower population growth and a decreasing overall labor force participation rate are expected to slow the expansion of the labor force over the next 10 years compared to the last 10. That's already happening here because of our aging workforce. So we know that's going to happen. Employment growth will be concentrated in service-producing sectors. As a matter of fact, 90% of the projected increase in employment over the next 10 years in the U.S. economy is in services. Now, if you were in a community that was not participating in that, you'd be in trouble. But we're a community that is participating in that. The two industries projected to have the largest increases are professional and business services and healthcare. They're our two biggest pieces of our economy. Two biggest pieces of our economy. Over half of all new jobs over the next 10 years. At a more detailed level, 3 of the 10 industries projected to have the largest job increases are, when you get down to the really detail, are within professional business services, management, scientific and technical consulting, computer systems, employment services, and 4 of the top 10 are in healthcare. So the places where Missoula is large and growing is where the U.S. economy is projected to grow the most. We're well positioned. And of the 10 detailed industries projected to have the largest declines, 4 of them are in manufacturing. That's happening here as well. But the single biggest decline is going to be in department stores across the United States. It's just going by the wayside, and it has been for a long time. So here's our economy. And today we're going to be talking about what's happening in retail trade. We had a very good forum on healthcare. And again, we are extremely well positioned in this area. And business and professional services has become our strength. And then education. These pieces are the core of the Missoula economy now and going forward. The things that will service these core components is what we do in workforce development and education and infrastructure. So what we do as a community relative to workforce, education and development, and infrastructure will serve all of these. At a larger, more encompassing level, what's making Missoula work is our identity as an arts and cultural community, and entertainment and recreation are just coveted by everyone. And then at a larger level than that is the quality of life, relatively high quality of life, and the amenities associated with that. So everything we do to make those things work better will serve our core strengths going forward as a community. This was the framework, I'm almost done here, to take this forward, and there's an awful lot of good work going on in this community. I mean, I just heard, is the new head of the Chamber of Commerce board here? I just heard him announce what his 4 or 5 main focuses was going to be. They're good. We're getting really on mark with where we need to go. I know I saw Wolfgang here earlier. The Chamber has a group looking at workforce development, training, and education. Very important. But quality infrastructure and a quality workforce are going to be key components going forward, and these are just other elements of that. But I just want to, I think this is my last one. 3 things that could best assure Missoula's economic future. And these are not things you do in a month or a year, but it's how do we take this thing forward and make this community serve where it's trying to go economically. We really have to do the workforce development and education thing as well as we can. And we're a long ways from that right now. We actually had one of these business forums focused on that. It's not a sexy thing to talk about. It's just important. Our infrastructure development, we have a hard time planning 4 blocks of a street. Hi, Steve. We have to have a road map for infrastructure and transportation because we are now in the age of infrastructure. And there's going to be tremendous spending and investment in infrastructure. And if you don't have your game plan laid out, you're not in the game. So we need to do this, focus on it. And what I'm suggesting is, create a diverse group to really come up with both a vision and a plan for the infrastructure of the valley. And I know there's a lot of work done on this, but I'm just saying these are, hopefully, it's just pointing out how important, whatever work is that is being done on this is centerpiece, and so is that. The last thing is that when the downtown area did its master plan and identified that arts district, that's a big idea. I mean, the idea that you would build off of that children's theater, and the university's trying to figure out a art museum. We've had people pushing a performing arts facility. We need to put that on fast track. And why? Because it works for us. It services everything we want to do economically, but it also will help retain and attract a young and talented workforce. And that's the other key part of this. So those are the 3 things I would identify. These are the things that really count. I'm all finished. We're going to, I got just a few questions that fit in right here before we go to the next group. Are there any questions on some of that information? Yeah, right here.
We need infrastructure, we have no revenue. The state of Montana, we are paupers in terms of funding for infrastructure, and the needs greater, far greater than the revenue available. So what do we do?
And see, that's why Missoula and these urban centers keep going back to the legislature every 2 years and asking for a local option. It's trying to come up with a local source of money that you can kind of throw into this small pot that we're working with here that Brent's aware of. But also you can use those dollars then to leverage other dollars. You could leverage some more federal money. And so you're going to see Missoula and our growing cities still going back to the legislature saying we need a local option. And then the legislature hadn't given it to us 15 times, I guess, or something like that.
And it's done. I mean, we are working on a statewide option right now.
The good thing about having a local option sales tax is that we don't have a statewide sales tax. And before the state gets the money, it would be good if the local areas got the money.
Well, and what we're working on, a group of business associations, I guess you could say, including the consulting engineers and the contractors through the state, is a statewide funding source that would come back to local counties and cities and fund infrastructure directly, bypass sort of the state process. It's dire. We are in dire need of that. So,
Anybody else something? We need to, anything? And we'll have a general Q&A at the end of this, and I'll be around for that. We're going to kind of proceed then through the parts of this, and we're going to start out with the retail area. This retail discussion will kind of be, how did last year look compared to where we are right now? And kind of expectations as to how those folks that are right in the middle of this see this working through over the course of next year. And we have both Tim Winger here from Southgate Mall, and Kim Johns is here, and will speak to the downtown retail situation. And I think they're ready to start. You guys ready?
Thanks, Larry. Good morning. I guess I'll hide behind this table. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about retail. My name is Tim Winger. I'm from Southgate Mall. He already said that, but the reason in the retail sector that I'm in, and I kind of look at the retail in this town as a three-legged stool with a reserve downtown in the mall. And if there's other retailers here that are not in those areas, I mean, definitely a part of it. That's kind of how we look at it, because that three-legged stool works not just because of the Missoula County area, but it works because we draw from 3 hours away in most directions. And when we convince a retailer to come and do business in our mall, and it's not because of the 63,000 people in town, it's not because of the 110,000 people in town, it's the 800,000 people that we draw from that come here and shop. So that's what makes retail, I think, work in Missoula. National sales, retail, we've always been a few percentage points ahead of what is happening nationally. That gap's probably closed a little bit this year. We consistently, through September, comp sales have been down anywhere from 3 to 5%, 4 to 6%, right in there. October actually was the first month that a lot of retailers and the indexes that I look at saw growth in comp store sales since probably August or September of last year. So that was some good news for October, but when you actually drill down to those numbers in October, our LY was really weak, and we're actually probably at around 2006 numbers rather than exceeding 2007 and 2008, because we had a really good year in 2006, double-digit increases. 2007, not quite double-digit, but strong increases, and then the last quarter of 2008 really jarred us. So that's what we're seeing at the mall now. The mall specifically, our total mall sales are up 2%, but that's not comp. We have two pretty large additions to the mall last year in Red Robin and Hollister that are carrying that little bit of growth for the entire mall, but our comp are about 4.5% down this year. So we do have some categories that are doing better than others, but that's the mall-wide look. Forecasting the holiday, we don't get the sales in until about the 20th or 25th of each month prior, so I don't have November for you today. Yeah, I'm looking for a flat to maybe 2% up in November based on our traffic and the hubbub around the mall. December has started off very well. I can tell you on Black Friday, a lot of our stores were saying they had their days in at 2 o'clock or 2 or 3 o'clock that day, so it was a nice day for us. We had a nice traffic increase on that day. And things are, rolling along. Again, I think we'll have a decent Christmas with maybe a 2 to 4% increase because LY was a disaster last year, the last 10 days. If you're in retail, you know that the ice storm that hit about now last year and then the frigid cold kept our geographic market about 30 minutes away, and the difference between a very successful holiday and an okay holiday is people getting here from a couple hours away to shop on those weekends. So that's what we're looking at for the holiday. 2010, I think my 2010 today is probably a lot different than what I was thinking last week. But again, I think Larry's comment on the actual impact is going to be a lot less than what it would have been, 20 years ago. Because when you start doing the math and thinking, okay, we get maybe, 5% of that employee total, or 2% or 7. You can play with the numbers any way you want. It'll be, it could be a little single-digit impact for us at the mall, rather than a 15 or 20% impact that it may have had years ago. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. 2010, that we'll probably have a tough time being flat, and we'll probably hover around 2 to 4% down next year is my guess. So we'll see. If we do a good job leasing and some deal making, our comp stores maybe hover around that, but our total mall sales may be able to grow because of some successes that we might have on the deal making. And that's another story. The real estate deal making we've seen inklings of money availability for national retailers to grow a little bit next year, when you kind of when we're working with the brokers and the leasing agents of those stores, rather than saying, oh, we aren't doing any stores in 08, we aren't doing any stores in 09, you're hearing, we may do 10 to 50 stores depending on the size of the company over the next 24 months. So that's an interesting thing to happen, and I say that guardedly because that's what they're saying today, but in 6 months they may be saying something completely different. And our big convention, where a lot of the deal making happens for the retail industry, is in May of this year, and you get a really good pulse in May of what's going to happen for the next couple years after that. But it's an interesting landscape on the national. Locally, we've had some success because there's some great entrepreneurs in this town, and they've done some great stores in our mall, and they've had success. We have been very aggressive with our deal making there, because we really see talent out here in this great area of ours, and we really lessen the risk as much as we possibly can right up front, to give them a good chance to get a solid base. So that's been something that we truly believe in. And as you know, the ownership of the mall has been here for a long time. They built the mall 32 years ago, and they enjoy very much working with the local folks on creating a concept for the mall. The last thing that I would say is the deals are definitely tougher. We see tenant allowances needed, and that's a tough thing. We see co-tenancy language that's tougher than it has been in the past. And then the last thing I would say is that there's kick-out clauses and protection clauses that are tougher than what they have been in the past. So those are things that we're dealing with. And the very last thing that I would say is what I see the retailers have recalibrated over the last 6 months, a year, and when they weren't spending money on growing stores, what they were spending their capital on was improving their businesses. They were investing in technology, they were streamlining, and they were improving their customer service at the stores. And I think that we have seen that in the industry rags, and we have tried to do that ourselves, and that is become better during these times. This is the time when you can look at your business, and when you're struggling or things are not as great as they were in 06 and 07, that making that business better, being creative, challenging yourself, because you kind of can get complacent when things are riding high, and that's what we see happening. And I think the businesses that do that well are setting themselves up for success in the future when things turn around. So that's my piece, and I'll turn it over to Kim.
Hi, once again, I'm Kim Clagus-Johns. I own J. Elaine's Boutique in downtown Missoula, and I have been open downtown for about 15 years. I moved locations about 2.5 years ago, up the street, about a block and a half, but I'm still on Higgins. told I have to stand. And I also sit on a number of boards that kind of put me in touch with a lot of different organizations downtown. I'm on the Missoula Downtown Association Board, the CVB, and the MAEDC Board. In keeping with what Tim has said, I think one of the things that's important to keep in mind is what we do offer in a town our size. As he said, the three-legged stool is very valid. There is Reserve Street, which is your very typical kind of big box store. You also have the mall. I think one of the things to note that is somewhat unique about our mall is that there are a larger number of independent stores in that mall than most malls. I know if you go to large cities, you're not going to come across independent stores that actually have locations in the mall, i.e. the Trailhead just opened a location there, which is fabulous. Oil and Vinegar, Magic, a lot of that is an anomaly, and that doesn't typically happen in a mall, which makes our mall kind of unique and special. I can speak specifically to downtown retail, which is a completely different dynamic in so many ways than what happens at, let's say, a mall. We run on a completely different philosophy in many ways. Whereas the mall, let's say Black Friday, for instance, or Reserve Street, they drive traffic to their locations through sales and events and discounts. As far as our downtown retailers, and in particular, most of us, if not all of us, are small and independent retailers. We simply can't do that. We don't run on margins that allow us to do that. So we have to figure out how we can how we can actually not only retain, but get more business downtown. We do that in offering unique niche type products, customer service. The mall does provide excellent customer service. But I do know for a fact that probably 85 to 90% of the people who walk through my front door, my staff and I know their names, typically their husbands' names, and the last time their children were in trouble, which is helpful. But as far as what my downtown retailers have been telling me, we are down. There's many businesses that are down sales-wise, unequivocally. But I will also tell you that our profits are not all down as they have been in the past. And I think that's a component of trying to run our business smarter. One of the things that is very important to me in my business personally is to find as many lines as I can that are made in the United States. It is a conscious effort that I have. And I will tell you, in women's ready-to-wear, that is quite a difficult task. But I've done it, and what I have found is that when you can find those lines and you can communicate that information to your client, that does make a difference. You are going to pay more for something that is made in the United States. But we as a country are becoming more conscientious of this, and that $5 difference is making less and less of an impact to their decision to buy. Consequently, if you can somehow balance that with trying to keep your expenses as low as possible, then you're more profitable. So obviously that's something that I think many of the downtown retailers have found. Even though some of our sales may be flat or down, our profits in some cases are up. I think another thing to keep in mind is what we sell in a downtown retail experience is an experience necessarily. People who go to the mall, and once again, we truly have a fabulous mall, they go there for different reasons than they come downtown. And what we sell as a downtown is a collective experience. And whether that is making sure that you start at one end of Higgins and go to the other, you're going to have a multitude of options. Chances are, once again, many of these retailers are going to know your name. You're going to be able to go into a Liquid Planet. You're going to go into a Break Espresso. You can go into Warden's and pick up wine. That's an experience. It's a completely different shopping experience than you're going to have anywhere else, and that's something that we sell. That is something that makes us unique. So that's how we are a little bit different. One of the things I will say I think we've done as retailers collectively and as the different organizations, and those organizations, let's say, would be the Business Improvement District, the Parking Commission, the MDA, the CVB, and the Chamber. One of the changes that I have seen in the last 5 years in particular is there is a tremendous effort to work together, more than I have ever seen before, whether it is, collectively pulling our funds to market our downtown as an entire, once again, experience. Not just, I'm going to throw $10,000 hoping that people will come shop in my store. Let's do a $150,000 marketing campaign and let people see what they can actually experience downtown collectively. And I think that has been a change that has happened in the last 5 years or so. And all of these organizations do need to be given a pat on the back for that collective effort because it is making a difference. For instance, one of the things that we are seeing is in the process of talking to our potential clients and talking to the general public, why don't you come downtown? Why do you go, let's say, to Reserve Street or the mall? Ours has been a discussion. We're not open late enough for them. So we, as a downtown, have decided that every third Thursday, let's stay open. Let's see whether or not we can answer some of these questions that they have as to why we're not making it as convenient for them. So as a downtown, we are making changes to kind of be more like, let's say, the mall or Reserve Street where their hours are different, and many of us are changing those hours. As far as independent businesses and talking to them, I will tell you the ups and downs and the percentages of loss has a lot to do with the niche. The more specialized, in particular with our downtown retailers, the better they're doing. This is a very recreation-oriented city, as many of you know. So a lot of our smaller downtown businesses that are very specific to, in particular, recreation, are still doing really well. The trends that you're seeing of retail being down, a lot of them are, to a certain degree, protected and doing better than some of the others. I will tell you the hardest hit area, and Tim could possibly speak to this, retail-wise, has been women's ready-to-wear across the board, whether it's at the mall or whether it's downtown. And that's the nature of our society, and that's the nature of women, I think. If you think about it, so many of the people, or if you look at a husband or a wife, the wife is the one that's doing the predominant shopping in the household. And if times get tough and their pocketbooks are not as free as they used to be, it's our nature, by and large, that the kids will still be taken care of and there's still going to be food and the husband may get something. But if there's some cutback, a lot of times it's going to be in women's ready-to-wear. And so consistently across the board, I will tell you women's ready-to-wear. Am I wrong?
No, our big, you guys, many people have heard me say this, mom is going through a recession, but the kids aren't.
And that is absolutely positively true. Tim could speak more specifically to this because he would know the numbers better than I. The other dynamic that we have in Missoula, particularly for a town our size, we have an extraordinarily high number of women's specialty stores. It's very uncommon to have a town our size and have 8 women's specialty stores in a 4-block area, and we do. And so that's just general competition that makes it a little bit more difficult. And then on top of that, take the, moms are having a recession. Because I am sure, I could be wrong, but my guess is that the teen aspect of his businesses is probably up. The women's ready-to-wear, the specialty boutiques downtown that are doing really, really well are the stores that cater specifically to high school and college kids. Those of us that are hurting or struggling more are the ones that the mom's shopping for the college and high school kids. So, any questions?
All right, thank you both very much. Let's give them a round of applause. our conversation today is going to build on each other. So we just heard from the retail sector, as Larry was mentioning earlier, there's a couple of primary components that we're going to be focusing on when we get into open discussion later on this morning. I think that the retail and the role that it plays in what Larry referred to as perhaps the new economy, the professional service industry, what does that mean? How do we all adapt? How do we adjust as a community to what he declares as the new economy and the fact that we have to, as he puts it, work out of it? And what does that mean? So as you go out for a quick break, let's go ahead and try to keep it to maybe 10, 15 minutes max. We're going to come back and we're going to hear from the financial sector, then more of the construction infrastructure sector, and then we're going to have some table discussions as it relates to how does all this come together for 2009 and how do we work together for 2010.
The 2010 president of the Missoula Organization of Realtors. I also work with RE/MAX Realty Consultants here in town. Glad to be here this morning, and I've got all sorts of fun and exciting numbers and information for you. Looking back over this last year, especially this November, which was a real interesting month for real estate sales in Missoula, and then also a couple things just kind of looking forward and what we can expect in 2010. So this is real interesting, and I've been talking to a bunch of people about this. In 2009, this year, in the month of November, in the Missoula urban area, so when we talk about Missoula urban, just here in the valley, it does also, though, include East Missoula area as well, but not any further out beyond Bonner or anything like that. We had, so in 2008, we had 32 sales in the month of November in the Missoula urban area. In 2009, we had 83 sales, 51 more sales than last year. Now, the median price in 2009 has gone down, though, to $200,000 from where it was, the median sales price of the homes in November, as to where it was at $214,000, $250,000 in 2008. A lot of this is something that we can just directly show comes from the first-time homebuyer tax credit. And so most people who were closing on their homes that they were purchasing in November, were writing offers on them, putting them under contract in September and October before there was real discussion in Washington, D.C. about the extension of the tax credit. So it's real interesting. In November, we saw a big jump in sales because of a lot of people trying to take advantage of that tax credit in time. And of course, now that's been extended to the point where homes need to be under contract by let's see here, April 30th and close by June 30th. So we can probably expect some similar activity where the first-time homebuyer tax credit is going to drive us through these first 4 or 5 months of 2010, and probably once again see a large flurry of activity in March and April and closing activity in May and June. So I looked at some numbers and I wanted to see just year-to-date stuff, and I pulled this up yesterday. So, and these numbers, all these numbers came out of the Missoula Organization of Realtors multiple listing database. And so I saw that year-to-date in the Missoula urban area, we had 871 sales with a median sales price of $209,000. Now, the same time last year, we had 882 sales with a median sales price of $215,950. So we see that median sales price is continuing to go down a little bit. And our numbers are kind of put us on course to have a very similar year as to last year. I thought it was kind of interesting because we saw such a strong second half, which then I went back and I looked at. In the first half of 2008, we had 467 sales. In the first half of 2009, we had 379. So that a lot of the recession concerns and things that we saw from this time last year carried over into the first half of this year. And then, so in the second half, year-to-date of 2008, we had 415 sales. As I'd pointed out before, we saw the big slowdown in November, and then the second half of this year, we're at 491. So our sales are up in the second half. And currently, as of yesterday when I pulled it up, we have 68 homes, and this is just residential, that is pending, listed as under contract in our market. So right now, looking at these numbers, and this is not, of course, official year-end, but if we could, within the next couple of weeks, have some closings and put us roughly at about 900 sales on the year, that would put us at a very slight volume increase, maybe about 2% or so from last year. It would still put us, though, down off of our peak year of 2006 of about 35%. So we've come down substantially off the peak, but we're seeing some signs that we've leveled out, and maybe we're starting to see just a really slow increase in our volume. Median sales price is going to continue to probably still stay down a little bit, maybe get a little closer to 200,000. Now, another real interesting thing that we do at the Missoula Organization of Realtors is we look at absorption rates. And what that is where we take all the active and pending sales in our market, and then we go back 30 days and look at what has sold. And that gives us an absorption rate. And the absorption rate represents, based on the last 30 days activity, how many months of market inventory is out there. And so what we started to do was we pulled it apart and we looked at different price ranges. When, just a couple months or weeks back, I was in San Diego for the National Association of Realtors convention, and they were talking about what they called a bifurcated market, where you have certain price ranges that are very healthy and certain price ranges that are challenged and having not seeing as good of conditions. Well, we have that going on here in Missoula too. I pulled up the absorption rates just yesterday, and in these price ranges, we saw some very healthy numbers. 150,000 and under, an 8.8 months absorption rate. 150 to 200, 5.5 months. 200 to 275, 6.2 months. All those very healthy numbers show good market activity. Once you get over that, though, the absorption rate climbs substantially. From 275 to 350, you get 19.8 months of inventory. 350 to 425, you get 36.5. And 425 and up, you get 78.5 months. Bifurcated market. It's split apart. And it's real interesting because we look at, so the heart of our market is 275 and under. And so as we proceed forward and we look at where Missoula needs to concentrate when we talk about affordable housing and what can be provided to people who are looking to purchase homes in Missoula, that 275 and under price range is what we need to continue to develop and have available for buyers, and that's the big part of our market right now. I've also got some numbers, and Sheila's got some more, and I'll probably just fire through these real fast of people are talking a lot about foreclosures and things like that. In our third quarter numbers, we'd had the information that was provided to us on trustee sales and how many houses went to foreclosures. Just real quickly, June, we had 33 foreclosures. July dropped to 13, August to 11, September to 12. So it seems to stable out a bit. Most of those foreclosures are conveyed back to the lender. Very few have been sold on the courthouse steps. Pretty interesting. Sheila's got some more numbers on that too. So like I said, looking ahead, the first half of this year is going to be driven by the tax credits and those who want to take advantage of it. First-time home buyer tax credit is continued. The other real interesting aspect is the move-up buyer tax credit of $6,500, where if you have owned your home, your primary residence, for at least 5 of the last 8 years, you sell your home and you buy another. It doesn't have to be move up in value, but just buy another as a primary, you receive a $6,500 tax credit. What's kind of interesting is, of course, our market time is over 100 days, and you look at, you have to have your home sold and closed and have another one under contract by April 30th. That's kind of putting a pretty tight timeline on it. So most people who are looking to take advantage of that tax credit probably are going to be looking to list their homes within the next couple of months and hopefully have them under contract through the spring so they can purchase early summer. So this spring we should probably be seeing more listing inventory coming out on the market and more buyers just trying to take advantage of that tax credit. That pretty much just covers it. Some of the information that we got from the National Association of Realtors is that the affordability index this year, 2009, had hit an all-time high. They anticipate that to scale back a bit, as nationally we're going to start to see a little bit of home value recovery, maybe a real slight gain between 3% to 5%. And so there's a lot of signs that we've hit the bottom. We're not going to have a big bounce back, but we're going to just see some slow and steady recovery. So that's what I got for you guys. The Missoula Organization of Realtors, we do on our website, we have a market trends button. We report monthly information. A lot of this can be found on there. So if you ever need the information, just MissoulaRealEstate.com. Thank you.
Good morning. I actually have mixed information. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative. I'm Sheila Lund with First Security Bank, and I work in the real estate department. And as you all know, we've had some significant challenges in the mortgage industry over the last 24 months or so. We do feel that some of the negativity is starting to fade, but we're not out of the woods yet, and we anticipate some additional changes to take place here in the near future. The people who have been able to survive in our industry, I would say for the most part, have had a fairly decent and profitable year, although there still are several banks across the nation that have failed. Through the end of October, there were 100 bank failures. I would say a large percentage of those were directly related to development and land type lending transactions that were in each individual bank's portfolio that was not sold in the secondary market. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we hear and read a lot about those two entities. They are still in an indefinite conservatorship, and with Washington in charge of those two entities now, nobody's really talking about what their future is, and we don't really know what to anticipate with those. One of the big concerns that is still out there is with lenders who depend on warehouse lending lines of credit that have not been available, and also the state of the jumbo mortgage market. The jumbo mortgage market in Montana would refer to anything that would be a loan amount higher than $417,000. Those mortgages were not directly sold to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Those were usually purchased by individual investors, and that market has more or less dried up over the last 24 months. Rates have actually come down significantly from what they were on a jumbo loan, but we're really not seeing much activity in that area. One thing that I would say is that we are all very happy that we still have a secondary market. If we didn't have secondary markets that we could sell our loans to, and the banks had to do internal portfolio loans, your borrowers would have higher rates and less favorable terms for their mortgages. And I know that some banks have started to get a little bit more creative so that we can help facilitate some of those transactions for the borrowers that don't necessarily fit into all the boxes. But they would definitely have a less favorable term and a higher rate if they were able to do that. Another big change that we saw this year was implemented in May. It's called the HVCC, which is the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, which was implemented by the feds. And it's a fairly unfortunate process that we've had to deal with. And what that means to us is anyone who is in the lending industry that is an originator or has anything to do with the processing of a mortgage loan can no longer have any communication with the appraisers. So we've developed long-term relationships over 25 or 30 years, and when you can't call the appraiser to request a typographical error on an address, it's pretty unfortunate, and we feel like we've all been penalized by some of the collusion that's transacted in previous years because of that. Underwriting guidelines continue to become more restrictive. One that just came out the 14th, which was Monday, on a conventional loan, the total debt to income ratio cannot be higher than 45%, irregardless of your findings on your automated underwriting system. The underwriting system that we use across the nation are either directed by Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, and they have always looked at, I would say, a level of risk. So if you had a borrower who had excellent credit scores, maybe had a 70 or 80% loan to value, had some liquid cash, but their debt ratio was 50 or 60%, I would say to you that 99% of those loans would have been approved. As of Monday, that will no longer be the case. So people's income and their consumer debt needs to be in line. Another thing that we've had to deal with is the fraud that has taken place, and I don't know the millions of dollars that they talk about across the nation, but one of the new implementations was verification. It started out only with self-employed borrowers. We've always gotten tax returns, their personal, corporate, LLC, partnership returns, whatever. We would analyze those and use our income verification based on what they provided us. Now we are not able to close a loan until the borrowers sign a 4506T, and we actually pull the transcripts directly from the IRS to verify that the tax returns that the borrowers provided were what they showed the IRS. I will tell you, we have not experienced one discrepancy. So again, in Missoula or in the state of Montana, we kind of feel like we're being penalized because of some of the other transactions that have transpired in other places. FHA loans have become more popular. Those are usually a loan that first-time home buyers utilize. But the reason they have become more popular is because on a purchase transaction, a borrower can come in with as little as 3.5% for a down payment. They have also had what I would say looser underwriting guidelines where they're not as strict if somebody has had a couple of slow payments on their credit report or whatever. And they have also increased the maximum loan amount. So in Missoula County, you could actually finance a loan in this year up to $291,000, which really, that doesn't necessarily seem like a first-time home buyer loan amount, but it has worked for a lot of people. Rates have been, I would say, relatively stable all year. The government has been purchasing mortgage-backed securities on a pretty regular basis, which I think is the primary reason that the rates have stayed relatively low. Usually rates are higher in the spring and the summer because of the supply and demand, which if you look at the rates which we track, that is true. In the months of June, July, and August, the rates were as high as they've been all year. And a couple of days in June, they approached 5 3/4, but since September, mortgage rates on a 30-year fixed have been hovering between 4 5/8 and 4 7/8. So rates are absolutely great. Brent has talked about some of the activity in the market. Honestly, with as good as rates are, we would have anticipated that there would be more activity than there is, but I think people are still a little bit apprehensive about their job stability, and therefore there really hasn't been as much activity related to the rates. It has increased the refinance volume, and I guess I would say probably 70% refis and 30% purchases. If you look at the average over the year, would probably be pretty close to what most lenders are seeing. What's that? Oh, okay. And then the other thing is we still continue to go through regulatory changes. As of January 1, HUD and the feds have implemented new requirements for lenders, title companies. We've all been hustling and bustling for 60 days or more trying to get our people trained, trying to update our software, but what the implementation is directly related to is the consumer and their ability to shop for a mortgage loan. The good faith estimate that we've always known and seen as a one-page document, it's going to a 3-page document. The unfortunate thing about that is I think it's less informative than more informative for our borrowers. It does not show their total cash requirement to close. It just shows their closing costs, so it doesn't include the down payment. And it does nowhere, anywhere on the document show what their total monthly payment is going to be. And those are the two things that most people want to know. How much cash do I need to come to the table with, and what is my monthly payment going to be? And then I guess the last thing is you read publications, and there's a lot of people who have been in the business a long time across the nation in the industry. Their little quote recently is you can chill the champagne, but don't cork it yet.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia Hall. I've been in the real estate industry in Missoula for about 34 years. I work at Stewart Title and have for the last 12. Stewart Title at the beginning of 2009 approached our market cautiously. Change was happening. We could see that happening. And the spike in our market was declining. So we looked at 2009, decided where we needed to be, and approached that very cautiously. Sales are steady, but they're not spiking. So we saw an upcrease from 2006. We were all very busy, very pleasant in the market. But for all of 2009, it's been a very flat but steady market. As Sheila has said, we're probably closing a few more refinances this year than we did sales, but the sales seem to be steady. We've seen the prices decline, which these two people have indicated to you, not by a huge margin, depending upon the purchase price or sales price of the home. But we have also seen that. Overall, it has been a good year. In my industry, it takes about, if I have 12 employees, it takes 10 new orders to support those 12 employees. If that begins to decline, then as managers, we have to look at the market and say, do we need to cut hours? Do we need to lay people off? And that's not something that my employer likes to do. So we look at other ways to increase revenue if the closings are down. Foreclosures are out there. We've seen more of them the last 2 years than we have in the last 10. I remember many years ago when Montana was the 4th highest in the nation in foreclosures. Today, today, if you look at the Missoulian or the Independent, you'll see that there's foreclosures posted every single day. And sometimes there's multiple columns. And that's a very sad situation for our people in Missoula or Ravalli County to be in. I actively get involved in some of those foreclosures through short sales. If you don't know what a short sale is, it means that the customer or the seller owes more on his home than what it can be sold for in today's market. If I'm processing 10 short sales, 2 of those will actually close. 8 of them will be more difficult because of secondary financing, judgments, or collections. And there's not enough money to go to each party in that pie. As this year approaches, again, we're looking at it very cautiously, very conservatively, trying to project what is going to happen. And the bad news on Monday about stone closing has showed concerns in my market also. How will that impact our market? Because Brent and Sheila and I all work very closely together. What that's doing to those people who have lost their jobs, how many houses that will put back on the market, and can those homes be sold prior to those going into foreclosure? So I think we're going to have a good year. I think the tax credit is going to help those individuals the first quarter. I think implementing it to people who have owned a home before is also going to help. And I'm positive about 2010. And I'd like to thank you.
All right, do we have any specific questions for this panel? Okay, then we'll go ahead and have the next panel convert back up or come up, and you guys question over this way? Okay. second, I'll get the microphone to you so you can have it.
Yeah, Sheila, we've heard in the national news that one of the drivers for the economic engines is banks, financial institutions making more money available for small businesses and home buyers and being aggressive in that area. Would you comment on that, and how are you responding to that? First Security, did I hear you right?
Right. I would say that for the most part, banks are very anxious to lend money and to help people. Depending on the programs that they have available would actually have an impact on what products are available. Larger banks have, as an example for a small business, and I'm not in the commercial department, but I have worked at the bank for many years. SBA lending is becoming more popular, and individual lenders are being required to get more up to speed and educated on some of those programs that have been a little bit more cumbersome in the past. I think that you see a lot of partnerships in the Missoula community as an example, where you're getting referrals from accountants or attorneys or other people in the economic sector. And as far as I know, most of the banks in Missoula are still anxiously lending money. I would say that the one area that has probably become a little bit more restrictive is on the development and land and construction side with speculation building, etc. But like I said, as far as being a little bit more creative on the residential side, I think that we're trying to implement some new products for what I would call an in-house loan program. But again, you're not going to have the same rate or term that you would maybe like a 5.5 ARM on a 30-year ammo or something like that versus a 30-year fixed rate would be an example that I would use. I did hear today too on the radio, just for your information, City Mortgage has suspended their foreclosures for the next 30 days across the nation for the holidays. So I think when you look at some of the bigger fish out there, that they are also trying to help people as much as possible.
All right, thank you very much. That's a nice segue as well. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and segue into our next panelist. You guys, thank you very much. Appreciate it. But I will keep up with you.
Are you going to do it?
Yep.
Well, good morning. Oh, you got the clicker. This is forward and back. Can you do it? Great, thank you. Good morning. My name is Dave Zinke. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of Knife River Operations here in Missoula. I'm talking, I guess my presentation today is based on our company. I can only assume that, probably trends for the industry here in Missoula, but I'll go through this. First of all, I'd like to make sure everybody knows what Knife River does here in Missoula. We do a lot of infrastructure work that was mentioned today. So this is the roundabout on Higgins and Beckwith. So sidewalks, curb and gutter, sand and gravel. We ready mix supply. So this is a job out at the Missoula Airport. We're doing concrete paving here. Asphalt paving. This is Windsor Park subdivision that we're doing here. And highway work. This is up at Evero Hill this year, finishing the paving on Highway 93. I'm going back and forth here. Here in Missoula, we've got three operations that sustain our company. Target Range, which is a gravel operation that supports our ready mix operations. The Harry Allen Pit on Mullen Road, which, by the way, Target Range is in its last years of life. And we'll be moving that operation probably out to the Harry Allen Pit. Another little side note here, we've given this facility here to the city for city parks. And at the end of my presentation, I do have a little conceptual drawing of what the park's going to look like. Probably our largest operation is on North Reserve. We call it the North Pit, and that's where our main offices are located. We have our hot plant there, recycled products, and most of our asphalt. In the valley, the, housing market, highways and everything else. These are the products that we use. We have bedding, masonry, sand, concrete, wash rock products, pit runs, base rock, recycled products, asphalt, and concrete. I've tried to put this here is our aggregate supply, and we kind of trend in our market. So this is in 2007, 8, 9, and this is our projection. So you can see our markets as far as aggregate products has declined. Now these aggregate products are for ready mix, asphalt, base courses, and so forth. So this is our whole product of our business lines, but you can see the decline in the markets. And a lot of our work is dependent on the housing market. I mean, prior to the crash here, recession, we probably did 60% of our work private, subdivisions, ready mix, so forth. We've had to change our business structure now to the more public works, city, county, MDT, Forest Service, and so forth. So we're in a change here ourselves as far as how we do business. But we're kind of projecting in 2010, we're hoping to make pretty flat type transition here this year. Concrete volumes, same situation here in 07. In 08, we had a large concrete project out at the airport, so that kind of reflects in this number. But if you would take that 20,000 yards out of this figure, it would put it down to that 50,000 mark. And again, you can see the trend is down. Again, this year we're trying to project flat volumes. Asphalt, same thing here. Actually, it's been very stable in the Missoula market here, only because of a couple large projects that help sustain that. This year we had the Everett Hill project, which had like 60, 70,000 tons of plant mix. Prior year was down at Lolo. But again, the asphalt market, this is asphalt paving, seems to be kind of stable in the Missoula market right now. Construction volumes. Again, the trend, this is 07. It's kind of interesting in 08, inflation really hits a couple of these numbers. The reason that looks like we had bigger volumes, we did, but it was because of asphalt oils were $1,000 a ton. Diesel fuel went up to $4.50. So inflation really kind of impacts these figures here. So the trend again is still, if you take those out and index them down, the trend is down. So this year in 09 we only did $14 million worth of work in Missoula as far as construction. Tried to lay this out. This is number of employees, and of course this is what we used in our concrete, asphalt, curb and gutter, and earthwork. Tried to attach a dollar figure to these so that we could see the impacts to the community as far as the dollars spent or out there. You can see in 07 we averaged about 154 employees. 08, 146, and this year we were down to 121. And again, relative to the dollars there. Late season this year, the numbers don't reflect the actual dollar spent. We had a real late spring, with weather and so forth. And really the work wasn't out there this year. Thank goodness there was a couple stimulus projects that came out. We were successful on that, the Higgins and South Avenue. But this year, as far as finding volumes, we struggled. This here is fuel is a big component to our business. I thought I'd show here in dollars instead of volumes again, gallons, so that's what we deal with. But just to show the impact to the community, how many dollars are spent here. These are millions, but again, if you'd index this one, this is where this peak was when, $4.50 a gallon for diesel fuel. So if you index that down, you can see the trend is still coming down this year. Shows our volumes are down, which impacts our trucking, our equipment utilization, and everything else. Again, we're hoping in 2010, we're predicting flat, but even to get to flat, we're going to need some help from stimulus and so forth, money out there. These are the dollars that we've spent in the community here just for supplies, cement, asphalt, tires, nuts and bolts. So again, as our volumes drop, our participation in the community as far as dollars drops too. And now, like I said before, we kind of trend. So we're hoping we're at the bottom and things start to come back up. To end the presentation, I just like to kind of throw this out. You know, and I got a great group like this, but you know, a lot of people think construction, you know, we're harmful to the environment or whatever. I like to show that, you know, we like to try to, in Missoula, be good stewards of the environment, you know, and we try to recycle as many products as we can that would normally go to the landfill. So any of these reconstruction projects you see out here, as far as, you know, new parking lots or building demolitions, whatever, we take that material back to our facilities and crush it down and use it in base courses and so forth like that. So we do have a renewable type product out there. The old asphalt coming off the parking lots and so forth, we take that back to our pits, we process it. That old asphalt has oil in it, which is very valuable. So we have a process so we can send it through our hot plants, sucks that little bit of oil out there and supplements the rest of the oil. Reclamation, you know, all of our pits and so forth, gravel pits, we have final plans for reclamation, and they're all regulated, along with our air quality, hot plants, stuff like that. So a lot of laws that we have to pertain to too. Oh, that didn't show up very good. This is, I was just going to show everybody, we donated the Target Range facility to the Cities for Parks, and that doesn't show up very good at all. But anyway, there's the pond that we have a dredge in. And there's a second pond over here, and Fort Missoula is over here. But anyway, there's a artist rendition that the Parks Department has already put together here of trails, landscape, and everything else. That in the near future, that hopefully this facility out there will turn into a nice park. Thank you very much. Any questions?
In transportation funding. How is Knife River doing as far as statewide business? Because there's quite a bit of money out there.
Yeah, we have operations in Billings, Belgrade, Kalispell, Missoula. You know, probably Billings operations have probably been successful on a lot of the money, the stimulus money, more than probably this side of the state here. So they're probably the best operation getting that. Bids have been very competitive. I mean, the money's out there, but again, the markets are very competitive right now. A lot of contractors are hungry, and so we're doing the best we can. But we definitely, like Brent said earlier, we need more funding for infrastructure and everything else for cities and communities.
Good morning. My name is Steve King. I'm your City Public Works Director. I'm with the government. I'm here to help. Now, that may sound funny, but just as Knife River was talking about their business model tending toward public works projects, we are the bridge that's going to help sustain Missoula community in western Montana and get through some of this low point in our economic cycle. And there is a stability to government that doesn't have the same cycles as the business environment. So we have an opportunity, we have a responsibility for projects, project development, community involvement, and investment that keeps the contractors, engineers, suppliers, truckers, fuel dispensers working while the private sector is retooling, if you will. And while you're hunkering down in private sector, we're very, very, very busy downtown in local government. Working in city public works, we've got a variety of projects that we're working on. And right now is our busy season to put contracts together, get agreements with the Department of Transportation, get agreements with the federal government on economic stimulus projects. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of what's coming in 2010. All of these are works in progress. Not all of them will happen on schedule and without a bump. We are in Missoula. You can see by the size of the gathering here what an engaged community we are. That's great. It's vital. It makes for a stronger community, but it also gums up the works from getting out contracts sometimes. So my job is to get those contracts out, get money on the ground. Let's go to the next slide. So here's a picture of our community. I want to go through each one of these. Let me start up at the top, and I'll get into details of a few of them. But all points of the compass in Missoula. So we talk about it takes so long to get projects done. We're going to have activity out at the Y is even off the map here. We're in the Rattlesnake building a major sewer project. It's the last neighborhood to complete a collection system. So Mr. Swanson set it up with the quality of life. Environmental quality is very high. And Rattlesnake Sewer is the last neighborhood in the city of Missoula to go online with wastewater treatment as opposed to disposing of it directly into the aquifer. The Rattlesnake Gateway is at the edge where it goes where Greeno goes under the interstate. You've seen a new railroad crossing at Madison, Spruce, Greeno, North 2nd, and as it goes up the hill, that gateway into the neighborhood is going to be substantially reconstructed with ARA money, about a $200,000 project. By the way, the Rattlesnake project, about $4 million. 5th, 6th Arthur, I'll have a detail on that. Brook Street is a joint project with the economic stimulus, federal aid money, the Department of Transportation, and with the Urban Renewal District has got a major part. New sidewalks on Brook Streets, new pavement. We have a specific project on Brooks from Mount to Higgins by Hellgate High School to rebuild that road next summer. And you'll see new pavement, new striping, new curbing, new drainage, those types of things on that arterial. Heading back up north, congestion mitigation at Mullen and Reserve Street is a local initiative. The state's busy on Highway 93 elsewhere. The locals are taking charge. County, this is both county and city projects on this. It's not just City Public Works, this is county and redevelopment as well. But the county has funding for reconstruction of a portion of that intersection that should relieve some of the congestion at Reserve and Mullen. One of my top priorities to get that under contract this winter. The county is working on a Mullen Road bikeway that you saw the newspaper article, how things happen in a town is the little girl from Hellgate Elementary petitioned county commissioners, could you do something so I could ride my bike to school? The economic stimulus money was available, County Public Works got on it, they're putting together a $600,000 project to add non-motorized trail facilities paralleling Mullen Road. And that's kind of how things come about in a small town sometimes. The North Higgins Streetscape is one of the projects that I'm really proud to be a part of. The Downtown Association, redevelopment agencies, the business district, and the Parking Commission have been working for years on downtown master planning. So what's luck? We're lucky to have this money, but it's opportunity and preparation, and it's met with $1.5 million reconstruction of Higgins, North Higgins from Broadway up to Circle Square next summer. A new streetscape, new lighting, new pavement, corner treatments to improve safety for pedestrian, and there's new bicycle features as well. It should improve traffic flow, it should improve the downtown quality of life. It's an investment, a redevelopment investment in downtown, and that project is in development and should go out to bid in February. Just say that these are the categories that we're working on. We've traditionally worked with federal aid projects with the Department of Transportation. We've worked with local street projects. We have our own maintenance projects with the City Public Works, and we have utility projects. So these are the backbone of what we do every year. What we've gotten on top of that this year is the economic stimulus. So part of the mandate from the feds is do this, keep this up, and spend several millions of dollars more on these economic stimulus. So that's our challenge. That's why we're so busy downtown, is we're trying to work on our standard projects as well as getting new projects out to contract. Missoula has project anxiety, though. So we talk about doing something in Missoula, and people shiver, oh my God, what are the bikers going to bring? What's the truckers going to bring? What's the neighborhood interest going to do? We know that there's project anxiety, and it takes us a while to work through some of those. Next slide, though. This Higgins Beckwith Roundabout. Knife River built it for us. We had a local consulting firm, Morrison Merrily, design it for us in partnership with the Department of Transportation. A major hub on an urban arterial that's working. So we can make things work. Again, the opportunity was, we've been preparing for this, the economic stimulus. The majority of the construction costs are economic stimulus that made this Higgins-Beckwith roundabout. It's got a park feature to it, a little corner sitting area. It is what I would call the best type of investment. It's urban renewal, it's traffic operations, and it's safety. And it's working. And it should be durable for many, many years. So that's your federal tax dollars coming back to local community. Next slide. The community's growing. I wanted to give you the picture of the west and south and focus on the Miller Creek area. Next slide. So we're working Miller Creek, next slide. And here's an aerial view of Miller Creek roads, Upper and Lower Miller Creek Road, heading out to US 93 or Brook Street. This area has 1,100. It has 1,100 new platted lots to be constructed in the foreseeable future. Those are currently platted, entitled lots, major 800 lots in the Teton Edition, and another 300 lots plus that the Twite Family Partnership has been working on. There's a bottleneck on these roadways, and we're working on relieving some of the bottleneck. There was an initiative to build a new bridge into the neighborhood. That initiative is really dead. The conclusion of the environmental impact statement was that it's not practical to build a bridge. So the locals are taking charge, working with developer funds, no SIDs, but developer monies to build and improve the roadways on these two streets. The county is working on Upper Miller Creek, the city's working on Lower Miller Creek, and the city has a $3 million project to reconstruct Lower Miller Creek from the Y area, building a new roundabout. So I would say roundabout, everybody gets anxious, but as you can see, roundabouts can work. We're going to build a new roundabout to have continuous flow traffic operations at the Y intersection, which has been a bottleneck and a safety problem, and build 2 northbound lanes, 1 southbound lane, new bike lanes, sidewalks, drainage, a new roadway for the neighborhood. We will also be working on Upper Miller Creek, and the county's got a project with Twite on that, and we've got a federal another federal earmark project for Lower Miller Creek to put in new sidewalks to the golf course, to Linda Vista Boulevard. Take a question here.
Sorry to interrupt your presentation, but I have a question specific to this project. To my knowledge, this project has been under review for 12 years, probably more like 15. And over the course of time, there have been several routes, choices, etc., that the residents have approved that have been put off due to various political reasons, and now we're possibly forced into the roustabout that again politically has been chosen. Not a shot at you personally, but 15 years is too long, regardless of the end choice. What is the city doing to get things done in a timely manner? And this project is an excellent example.
Yes, that's an excellent point. And the pipeline of project development, environmental compliance, community consensus is ridiculous. It is maddening. It is ever present, and it's part of the fabric of Missoula. And so it can either go against that tide and do nothing, or what we've been working on is to keep a variety of projects going. So what I would say is we work on all fronts. So how do we mitigate that? We get a lot of things going. Some are going to bog down. Russell and 3rd Street environmental impact statement bogged down. The feds and the state and the city and the locals all are bogging that down. But in the meantime, what pops up? Downtown Master Plan North Higgins. We are going to bid on this project in 2 weeks. So this is a construction reality for the summer of 2010, assuming we get good bids from Knife River and others. But this is going to be out to bid. This is a real project, and it's really coming to this neighborhood next summer. let me move on and we'll have some more general questions. Next slide. So we've got utility work. Next slide. We've got utility work associated with Miller Creek. It's imperative that we get the infrastructure from the ground up, from underground up. So we're working on utility improvements as well as water. This is sewer improvements. We've got water improvements to go under the roadway. And what does that do? That gets the infrastructure in place. It also takes longer to build the project. Instead of just a road project, it's a road and sewer project. That's coming in this neighborhood. Portions of this have already been built over the last few years, and we're doing pieces of this summer as part of our contract that's going out to bid in a few weeks. We're in the Rattlesnake also. Next slide. So here's looking southwest from the Rattlesnake. This is one of the last remaining neighborhoods that wasn't participating in treating the human waste that comes out of their plumbing systems. It was going directly into the backyards and side yards and directly from there into our Rattlesnake Aquifer, which goes into the Clark Fork Basin and the Clark Fork Aquifer. We are having our drinking water come from where our waste disposal was going, not good in any equation. Most of the community for many years, since the 1960s, have been connecting to sewers. Rattlesnake's the last neighborhood. Next slide. And these 313 properties are paying half the cost. The feds, the state, and the local utility is picking up the other half of the cost. So there's a $2 million SID. There's $2 million of grants and other subsidies coming to the neighborhood. The average SID cost is about $6,400. And the overall project budget's about $4 million under contract. And that's under contract. We started last fall. We'll continue and finish this in the summer of 2010. Next slide. The 5th-6th Arthur intersection by the north end of campus, the university. Next slide. The university has been enduring Highway 12 traffic. We've been mixing Highway 12 traffic with university local traffic for many years. This is one of the busiest intersections for multimodal operations, bike ped, transit, and cars in the state of Montana. It was not a good mix. It's not an efficient mix with a one-way system. We're rerouting traffic at this to make it a more condensed destination. We're going to, where we've had the one-way couple around 5th and 6th by the campus, that will be short-circuited. All the traffic will go north on Arthur, and we'll widen portions of Arthur, put a new signal at Arthur and 5th, and help the traffic flow on Highway 12, help the traffic flow and segregate the campus traffic from the highway traffic. This project, the SID has been created. The state of Montana, through the university, is paying the construction costs. City labor forces is working with the Department of Transportation to make this happen, and we're planning on this project in 2010 as well. So one of my favorites, Reserve Street. It's a love-hate relationship. People hate Reserve Street, but 40,000 drivers a day can't be wrong. So there's some attraction there. And it's the big box stores. It's part of our triangle of commerce. It's loved to death. We don't have the money, quite frankly, we don't have the money to fix it or make it substantially better, so it's going to be incremental changes. We're working with the Department of Transportation on new signal timing, but locally, the commissioners put assessments in place for the Mullen Road area to pay for improvements, and we've got about a $350,000 project to modify turning lanes, add a northbound left turn lane to go west onto Mullen. That will increase the left turn capacity. That left turn lane that backs up northbound into the through lanes should be eliminated next summer. So an increment doesn't make the traffic go away, but it should be an increment of improvement on our Reserve Street corridor. So that's our 2010 projects, the county's 2010 redevelopment 2010 projects. This is more than $10 million of consulting work that's happening now and construction contracts that would go out for next summer.
Hi there. My name is Bill Clausen, and I'm the president of the Missoula Building Industry Association and also the president of Clausen Windows. The Missoula Building Industry Association is a 310-member industry association of builders and building-related companies that support the building industry. And Clausen Windows is a third-generation family business based here in Missoula. We manufacture wooden clad and vinyl windows for new construction and remodeling. To say that the last few years in construction has been a challenge would probably be an understatement. This summer at our state building association meeting, the chief executive officer of the National Association of Home Builders was reporting on national construction statistics and had reported that somewhere between the peak was 2.2 to 2.4 million housing starts, and that this year we were on course to hit about 320,000. So nationally, the statistics are pretty grim. In Montana, the statistics are certainly better. Statewide last year, we were down a third in housing starts. Statewide in Missoula was about 28%, so we did a little better than the state that way. This year, however, the state is down a third again, and Missoula is down about 50%. So new housing construction has certainly been a challenge. However, and I just speak anecdotally from our business's perspective this fall, we really started to see a lot more people coming in the door, starting to plan projects, actually starting to do some too. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't cooperate too well with some of those new housing starts, so that makes it a little more challenging. So our outlook for next year is guardedly optimistic. We're not going to make any big radical changes as far as adding staff or shifts until we actually see some of the business start to come back. And I think that's probably a trend you'll see around the construction industry as we move into next year. Some of the trends that I see fueling next year and potentially making some positive growth angles, one is in the area of green building. Now green, we hear green so often that it's sort of, I don't know, to me it kind of becomes confusing after a while as what the heck does it even mean? The NAHB, and in particular in the state of Montana, Missoula has been a leader in establishing the NAHB's green building standard, and we have led the way in the state of Montana for that. And so we actually have a ANSI approved standard system for green building that can actually tell you what is green about what you're doing in your construction, and you have a third-party verifiable way of doing it so that it isn't just kind of this hazy green marketing type scheme. You've got actual bona fide system that points out what that is. And to me, green, you can look at it from a couple different angles. Being in Missoula, we've got a pretty diverse crowd. And so if you approach green from say, the left, you've got the issues relating to climate change and looking at the environment. Or if you're more like me, approaching it from the conservative angle, green makes sense because we're called to be good stewards of our resources and the environment. And so it can be something that we can agree on for completely different reasons, but can be something that we all agree on. And the result of a green build project is better buildings that lead to better productivity or more comfort in your home, and also lower operating costs. So those are all very positive things that green building trends will do, that will put more money in the pockets of the folks that engage in it, both in builders and consumers. Which does lead us to another trend that I see. Anytime that you've got struggles with new housing, you start to see an uptick in remodeling. People start fixing up the things that they own rather than moving somewhere else. And so we're seeing a number of remodeling projects that are coming down the pike, and a number of builders that are revamping their business model to accommodate remodeling. And last year, the city of Missoula did a Green Blocks program. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but they did a Green Blocks program. And out of the 100 houses that they did, about 2/3 of those houses didn't have any insulation in them. And so we have a huge amount of housing stock in the city of Missoula that is in need of weatherization, either in the form of insulation, tightening up the building envelope, new windows, and those sorts of things, which will lead to lower operating costs for consumers. And so we're seeing a lot of trend that way. Don Garamone, who's a prominent builder in our group, has formed a remodelers council within NHB, or within the Missoula Building Association this year, that specifically caters to remodeling, and there's been a huge interest in that council. So we see the trends in remodeling being something to continue, which is actually being incentivized at the federal level with the federal tax credit that's available that expires in the year 2010. So you've got 1 year left on the federal tax credit to do some weatherization, and the state of Montana actually has a tax credit, and has had for a number of years, that's actually a little more aggressive even than the federal, because they allow a few more things in there than the federal does. So you've got some real opportunities to save some money over this coming year. And finally, it's also it's a great time to build right now, because frankly, a lot of builders have changed their business model, and with the lower building that's gone on, they're able to be a lot more competitive these days. You know, they don't necessarily have a lot of the overhead burden that they had before that they've got to charge for, and so right now is an excellent time to do that. And so we see a number of things trending upward in that way. So that's the extent of my report, so thank you.
All right. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to have all the panelists come back up front, but while they're moving back up front, we're getting that coordinated. What I would like to do is open up the floor for some table discussions. If we're going to have a community conversation, one of the best things for us to do is to actually engage in that conversation at the levels of the participants. So what I would like to do is have these 4 tables over here really kind of talk about the workforce aspect of it, and what is the impact of the workforce going to have on our economy, and as Larry stated, where the future of our economy is heading. With the question coming out of your conversations, how does the community respond? So if we know that workforce development is a particular issue, how do we as a community need to respond? You've got some great leaders of organizations here in the room, and if we're going to be creating what 2010 looks like for these forums, how do we respond, and what do we need to do? So I'll let you guys go ahead and get started with those discussions on these 4 tables. These tables across the middle here, I'd like for you guys to talk. You guys have to get back up front. I'd like for you guys to talk a little bit about, we'll start with this table over here and then go back over those 5. Talk about the infrastructure aspect of it at your table. The infrastructure is a problem. The pace in which our community is able to get things done seems to be a challenge. So how do we respond as a community as it relates to that? And then we'll open it up for some questions to the panelists as well. So I'll let you guys talk about the infrastructure, the pace of getting business done, and how do we respond as a community. And then last but certainly not least, this side of the room. And there are some folks that are out there that are going to be coming back. So as far as the table discussions are concerned, what are some of the things that are concerning you as far as workforce development? Does someone want to talk a little bit about workforce development and how it's impacting our community, and what you guys think that the community needs to do? Okay. All right, let's go ahead. Larry, do you want to talk a little bit about workforce development and the importance of it as it relates to where these forums go next?
One thing that is happening in the workforce, this is the fun part. This is like school, you know, everybody sits and listens to the presentation, and then when it gets time to do your part, everybody splits, gets out the door. But the workforce thing, Wolfgang Armitzbecher was here earlier, and there is a Chamber of Commerce work group, right? Am I right on that, Gary? And what's important about that is that if you let the people who are running the institutions, whether it's the College of Technology or the whatever it is, do all of the planning for workforce, trying as much as they can to get input from major employers and business folks. They're not very good at it. And what you have to do is just sort of always be there whether they want you there or not. So what's good about what the chamber did is they're getting all the people that are the beneficiaries of a good workforce development and training program, which we need, and it needs to get better every year. We've got those folks thinking about what is it that we need, and then talking in the other direction with the people that provide this kind of stuff, what their needs are. That's very important. Many communities don't have that, and so you know, a lot of times when the College of Technology, for example, is doing their workforce curriculum planning, they go to a retreat and they meet with each other. So you can imagine, you know, how's that going to work? Let's get together with our peers and talk about where we're taking our colleges. It's like the opposite way to do it. So you have to break down those walls, and you have to do it community by community. So I just have to, you know, say what you're doing there is very important, and as many people as possible have to join in that conversation, because otherwise they don't get it right. I'm just telling you. The educational planners are just going to miss it. So keep working at it and keep reporting out what you're thinking, and also look at what other places are doing, and that's huge. Who was going to do the workforce? Those folks over there that all left?
Yeah, workforce. All right. You guys were talking about infrastructure and the need to kind of move things along. Does anybody want to share what your table was visiting about? Because we do have a couple of, you want to?
We were talking mostly about the bureaucratic aspect of it, and how the different agencies that are involved with the funding need to work together simultaneously, and a lot of this stuff could probably move forward faster.
Okay. All right, perfect. And I know one of the other things that came up in a previous question today was really kind of focusing on exactly what you're speaking to, the speed and the rate and the pace. So are there, you know, a couple of things that you think would be helpful and impactful in making things move along quicker?
Well, I guess I would say the public sector needs to model more towards the private sector. For example, the private sector couldn't take 15 years to make a decision on a project and stay in business. I think it's totally appropriate for the public to have input in all the projects, and, you know, for different views to be looked at and et cetera. But there has to be some kind of a curb on the amount of time that is expanded on that. I think that would be one thing. Another thing would be for challenges. I think some kind of data has to be produced at the time of the challenge instead of just filing a challenge, so that there's some basis for the challenge in the first place, other than just a delaying tactic to spend more time and try to find something. You know, can we dig some dirt and figure out a way to slow this up, change it, get it to our political view? And I think, you know, the city, county, state, federal government people are all trying to do a good job, but because of the legislative or other rules that they're hamstrung by, you know, they're unable a lot of times to make that happen. So reform in those areas also has to come. You know, these things have to be, some of the measures that we've taken that have really overemphasized a single view's ability to control or distort a project has to be changed so that a more broad consensus can do it, and do it in a quicker basis.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Any of the panelists have anything that you want to respond to that? Or Larry, any comments?
Well, Steve left, and all I said to Steve Steve King, was that, you know, if we're always talking about infrastructure at a public hearing, it's almost the worst place to do it, because it's an adversarial type of thing. So I said to Steve, we got to get you to more of these things, because we need a vision, and then that vision can take the planning forward. But if you have no vision, the community has no large vision of where it's trying to take all that infrastructure, or if that vision's not widely shared and understood, then everything's going to be slow. So that's why, you know, in a forum like this, we like to get that out in front of somebody. We had a hand up over here on that one. Sure. So Rosalie, you're on the Missoula Redevelopment Agency Board.
How prescient of you to know that's what I was going to talk about. I want to put a little plug in for the city. That roundabout is in and installed and we're driving on it. And that is incredibly fast. And it is because of a lot of planning that happened beforehand. And on the redevelopment board, I can tell you it's very contentious to get a project through a public process. But our agency, and I think the city in general, has been incredible getting this money on the street. And the North Higgins Street improvements are going to start in March. And they're actually a testament to the way the Downtown Association has pulled together around the downtown plan. You have complete 100% support downtown for a really quite visionary look for our downtown and a real sense of the future and a modern economy that we have to house down here. So I think that you're exactly right, Larry. People have to come together and make a picture of it. We have pictures of it, and that money is getting poured into that plan now.
Is Missoula set up to take advantage of as much money as is coming through federally right now? I mean, you have to have projects lined up and ready to happen. Are we in that position?
Well, you sound aware. I don't know. I'm the wrong person to ask that.
I'm just curious. That's going to go on for another year or two.
We wanted more than we got.
Yeah. It's really both. It's kind of the availability of jobs, also where jobs are going, where job growth is going, and sometimes your ability to steer job growth in positive directions hinges on just how qualified and how adequate your workforce is. So that thing has to be a moving thing. I know we did a study in Great Falls. They hired some of the best economic development people in the country to come in and look at Great Falls and think about how do we get this place going, because it's just kind of dead in the water. And they came back saying, we know all the things that you want to do. The starting point, the most important thing is you've got to have a qualified workforce. These businesses and companies aren't going to look at you if you don't have that. So Missoula is really tailor-made to have first-rate workforce development and training programs, but it's got to be connected to the people in this room to make it work. So that's why we keep talking about it.
So with that in mind, and to answer the question that our group was supposed to or talk about is the number one problem locally, but not only locally but nationally, and is jobs. Jobs. We need jobs, and I know that the president and the government is trying to stimulate small business and provide money for small business so they can employ more people. And that's bottom line what we need to stimulate everything, the spendable income, housing, everything like that. But there's so much uncertainty with, from what I understand, with these small business owners and what they're going to look at or have to look at with the new health care reform and other issues like that. Is that correct?
Well, we're not always going to be where we are right now. We're going to get to the other side of this. But the thing that's going to carry us forward, is really attending to some of these key pieces. And we need to have a broad, diverse group of people working and thinking about these things if it's going to work. That's all we're saying.
All right, let's go ahead and transition over to our last section here.
Well, in regards to the workforce development, my wife works at the College of Technology, and higher education at that level takes a long time, like Larry said. But I'm glad to hear about the Chamber of Workforce, and the community needs to be talking with those folks. Those folks need to talk. The leaders at the COT need to talk. The leaders of the university and our state leaders, and they need to promote that. Our facilities here at the COT, the growth they've seen over the last 10 years is like fourfold in the numbers of folks that they're dealing with over there. And it's going to go up with the Smurfit Stone folks when they go into retraining. The facilities are completely inadequate. If you look at the facilities over there by Sentinel, they're ridiculous. They're working out of trailers, things like that. The city, the state, because it's state funded, we've got to get on board and say, how can we have job training and development when we're working out of literally trailers? That's not going to work, so we have to do something about that. to develop that. In regards to, the regulation, how many millions of dollars have been spent on Third and Russell, looking at it, doing an environmental impact study in an area, it's the middle of town. I'm not sure what exactly we're studying in far as environment, but that it spent years and millions of dollars, and it's still not really going anywhere. In the banking industry, regulation, I talked to a lot of banker friends of mine, and they say, we're trying to lend money. You've got the administration, screaming, you banks have to turn this around and lend money. And on the other side, you have the regulators coming in and telling these guys, you loan out any money, you're going to get in trouble. So, you've got one hand saying one thing and the other hand saying the other thing. And they've got to start getting their act together and working together and not, saying one thing publicly, but privately cutting it off. So, there needs to be a more openness there. I mean, I feel sorry for the financial institution folks because they're getting a bad rap right now because people are saying, well, they're not lending money. Well, they're trying to lend money. I'm a CPA. I see what they go through now compared to what they went through 2 years ago to get a loan through. And that's fine. We need to have good loans, but let's not make it ridiculous.
All right, thank you.
One of the biggest things just on the horizon relative to what you were talking about with the College of Technology is that Missoula is next in line for major funding for our College of Technology. So that facility will probably the next time around get funded. Yeah. So.
We're going to wrap up here in just a few moments, so we'll make this actually last question from the floor.
Actually, I just wanted to make a follow-up comment to that last statement, and that is, I think that is 100% correct. I work with businesses all over the country. This last year, I was involved in over $100 million worth of funding requests. 80 million was denied, okay, because the funds are not available. Someone said earlier that SBA lending is up. SBA lending is down by 75% from 2 years ago. It may be up month over month, but it's way, way down from where it was. And in independent bank lending, there isn't any to speak of for small businesses right now. Yes, if you have a long-term relationship with a bank and you need money for inventory, payroll, maybe a small expansion or something like that, you can get that kind of money. But if you're doing a big project, that's a different story. So I agree 100% with the gentleman on the other side of the room. The money is not there, and the administration is saying they're stimulating small businesses, but in reality, it's not making it to the small businessmen.
All right, thank you all for those comments. See all the good stuff everybody else missed? All right, thanks for sticking around. I think that the greatest challenge that we have going forward and that we're hearing from everyone in the room is we have to find ways to collaborate more. If we're going to take control over what our Missoula community can do as a result of what is happening, as Sheila said, to us in some degrees, or if we're being penalized in Missoula by a broader structure or more functional responsibilities just because it's being done across the nation, we have to figure out what that means for our community and what we might be able to do to help impact that in one direction or another. So I thank you so much for sticking around. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you again to all the organizations that are doing this. And please provide your comments to the leaders of those organizations so we can figure out exactly how we move this forward in 2010 and maybe actually start converting it from the conversation more to a working conversation in our community. Final last comment.
Well, my husband is the engineering manager out at Smith at Stone. And so, he has lost his job. It's been difficult for all of us. But I guess my biggest question is if an organization like Smurfit were coming into Missoula, bringing 400 jobs, $70,000 a year, the business leaders and the government officials would have bent over backwards to make that happen. We did a lot of work to bring in DirecTV. DirecTV is great, 1,000 employees. but $9 to $12 an hour is not something I could live on, nor probably most of us. And those are considered good jobs in Missoula now. What are we going to do to bring in the high-paying manufacturer? I know everyone is saying that the move is going towards retail and towards tourism. I think that's great, but a lot of those employees, the businesses, the owners will probably do okay, but a lot of the people providing the services really do not make enough money to have a quality of life that most of us would want. And I guess I'm concerned that we are abandoning our Montana roots of timber and mining, basically to be politically correct. And I just have a problem with that. I think we're giving up a facet of Montana lifestyle, which is looked at now as being a bad thing instead of a good thing. But it's been producing good jobs, trickles down to people being able to support those retail industries so they can be profitable. And I'm just trying to figure out what we can do as a community to encourage more high-paying jobs, not just service-related. And I'm in a service-related as a CPA, so I see that. And I understand all of the other concerns, but what are we going to do to bring in more high-paying jobs instead of settling for $9 to $12 an hour?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good way to end our conversation today. And although if anybody else wants to comment on that, we certainly can do so. But I think that what you put forward, as it directly relates to your situation, applies to a lot of situations that we hear in the room today and that we know are out there in our community across many of the industries that are, as you said, the Montana root connection to our communities. And the challenge that we have as a community is how do we join together to encourage the movement in the directions that's going to allow our environment, our lifestyles, and our communities to continue to be what they have been, as well as continue to become what they need to become so that we will be ready for, opportunities around the corner. So I thank you for your comments. And with that in mind, if we don't have any other comments on the floor from the panelists, I want to thank everybody once again for the time today. Thank you to the panelists and thanks to the organizations. And we will see you again in 2010. I have to end by saying, go Grizz.